welcome back to my crafty space. In today's video, I am going to be sharing a process video working on my second layout with the Begin Story Kit for Story Kit Crush. For today's layout, we're actually going to go really big and create not just a 12 by 12 layout, but actually a interactive 12 by 12 layout that would essentially be the equivalent of a 2-page 12 by 12 layout. So it's going to be a lot of stories to tell here and in a really fun interactive way. So hopefully I can inspire you today to try out something interactive with a page that you typically wouldn't do an interactive portion with, like a 12 by 12 layout. All right, so my story. Now, my story for today, I had this idea back when the Begin Story Kit came out, and I was a part of a chat, a story chat on the Allie Edwards Instagram page. That is a live chat that happens between 4 different people, typically Lisa, Allie, and 2 community members. And we chat about the kit that came out, ideas that come to mind, different stories we might want to tell, different ways of using the product, and all of those types of things. I know that this year the story chats are coming out the first Monday after the kit is revealed. So keep an eye out for those as we go through the year because they do provide a lot of inspiration. Now, if you watched the story chat that I did with Allie and Lisa and who else was with us? I'm gonna, it'll come to me. It was Emily and Emily. So it was Lisa Varshine, Allie Edwards, and Emily who was with us for the story chat. So during that talk, I mentioned that I wanted to use all of the 31 cardstock label pieces, die cuts on one layout. And my original idea was to create kind of a beginning, so like stuff that was happening at the beginning of 2021 and then things that were happening at the end of 2021 and doing kind of a before and after sort of layout with me walking and taking a fake picture of me walking so that I could represent the beginning of 2021 and the beginning of 2022. Well, in the meantime, I have dyed my hair red, so I can no longer fake a video or fake a photo from last year. So I had to kind of toss that idea out the window. But then I was watching Allie's process videos in the story classroom, and she did a layout with 22 of these die cut pieces and talked about, or they're going to hold 22 highlights throughout 2022. I thought that was really clever to talk about highlights, and I thought, okay, well, I still want to use as many of them as possible, so why don't I do 32, and only because that evenly splits into 16 per page, but 32 highlights of 2021, and then pair that with photos that represent those 32 things. So that's what we're going to do. I have gone ahead and pre-printed out all of my journaling onto these die cuts. It was tedious and slightly annoying, but I love that all of the text is the same and that I was able to fit a bunch of words into each individual little die cut piece. So it was totally worth it for me. But if this is a layout that you do and that's not something you want to take the time to do, you can also totally handwrite in them, and that's not a big deal. That's totally, acceptable as well. So in addition to the 32 of these, 31 of them are numbered and one of them is blank, and I'm just going to be fine with that. I've also pulled out the Start Here paper. Now these are a little bit bigger than 3x8 so that they can go inside of an album if you were to just punch them. I'm actually thinking I'm going to use this as a title piece for the section that's going to flip in the album. So I have that pulled aside to work with today. I've also gone ahead and printed 2 sections of photos. So each one of these is a 6x12, and each one of them has 16 pictures. So they are, I forget the exact size. I want to say they are 3 inches by 1.5 inches. And then I printed photos, and it actually goes this way. that represented our entire year last year, which I think is a really fun thing to look at just on a grand scale here. However, what I want to do is create a piece in the middle that's going to have journaling and a title, and then when you flip it, there's journaling and a title. So it kind of breaks up the photos a little bit and allows me the opportunity to add some context onto these different pieces as well. Now, if you are in tier 2, the photo templates here are available for you to use. So if this is a project that you want to make, and maybe you want to do an entire 12 by 12 with all the photos, or maybe you just want to do half and include journaling on the other side, there are photo layer templates that you can use inside of Photoshop in order to have your grids the exact same size as mine. Okay, so what I'm going to do now is put you on fast forward here, and I'm going to go ahead and get to work putting this one together. So let's do that, and then once I've got everything done, we'll slow back down. I'll read through all the different little pieces here and tell you the 32 highlights from 2021, and then we'll call this layout done. So let's go ahead and dive in.
All right, so after that long introduction of what I'm going to be doing in this video, let's get started on the actual doing. So the first thing I want to do here is create my interactive piece that's going to flip between the two pieces or the two photos, right? And I originally was thinking that I could probably just cut a piece of paper down and like bone fold just the end of it to stick underneath a photo. It'll make a little bit more sense here in just a second. So I originally cut a piece down at 6.5 inches by the 12 inches tall. Then I'm scoring it at the 1/2 inch. So now one section is the full 6 by 12, and one side or the other side of that fold there is 1/2 inch by 12 inches. So I'm going to fold this down, and then ultimately I won't use this, and you'll see why, is because when I go to stamp on it, the stamping goes through to the backside, and I didn't like the look of that, so I will end up coming up with a different way of putting this together. However, if you are not stamping with a project like this one where you're creating this interactive flip, if you are not stamping, or if your paper is thicker than mine is and you don't have the ghosting, then you can totally get by with just using the one piece of paper like I have. So I have set the paper to the side, my flip paper, and now I'm taking the 3x8 start here card and cutting it down and splitting the title apart. So I'm going to have one side that says start, and then the other side is going to say here. I want to add some stamping, some of the arrows from the begin stamp set. So I took the piece that I cut off that I'm just going to put in the trash, and I'm using that to help me mask the area where the word start is going to live. Then I added another piece of paper underneath the backside just so I don't accidentally get ink on my cutting mat here. And I'm using the long arrow stamp and black ink to create a cluster of arrows pointing to the other side. I wanted this to help give some direction on the flipping of the page, meaning like there's more if you just keep going and following the arrows. I end up stamping 6 of these in varying lengths. I like that it helps to fill up the area there, but that it also gives it a little bit more interest by having the various levels of those arrows. When I flipped that over, you could totally see the ghosting through, so you know what I mean when I say that it ghosted. And so now I'm just debating like, well, shoot, what do I do now? So what I'm going to do is bring my trimmer back over, and I'm actually going to cut off the piece that I had previously scored. I will then grab another piece of cardstock and trim that down to 6 inches by 12 inches. So now I have 2 of those sections, and I'm going to use the new section as the back side. So I'll stamp the arrows pointing back the other way, which will make a little bit more sense here in just a second, actually right here. So I'm going to use the word here the same way I did with the word start before. I'm using that same piece of cardstock that I'm going to toss here in just a second as a masking so I don't stamp too far over. and then protecting the backside. Now, before I did this, you also saw me trim out another piece of the 12-inch paper, so part of the 12 by 12 white paper. I cut that at 3/4 of an inch, I believe, or maybe I did, I did 1.5 inches. I cut that at 1.5 inches so I can score it in half, and then that's going to be the piece that will become the hinge, making this page interactive. That will make a lot more sense once we get to actually constructing the page together. So now I've got the arrows pointing to the right and I've got the arrows pointing to the left. So those are going to serve as a part of my title piece. Here is the hinge part that I'm using my scoring board to help me put a scored line directly down the middle of my cardstock. This is going to help make folding it much easier and will help to stabilize the spine part of that as well. So I am just going to use the bone folder to press that crease down in the middle and doing it on both sides. So I'm folding it both ways in order to make it as pliable as possible. Then I'll set that to the side until I want to use it again later. So next what I'm going to do is take the word start and the word here, and I want to fussy cut them out and add them to my title pieces. Because the words are interacting with the edge on the top side, I'm going to have them touch the top of my cardstock page as well. So it's going to look as though these letters are interacting with the edges of my page instead of the card. I do leave a little bit of a thin white line around the outside of each letter. That helps so that I don't have to cut exactly the right lines. And it also gives it a little bit more dimension by having the white outline around the outside edge. I like the way that that looks. So I'm starting with the S in the upper left-hand corner. Then I'm going to add the T so that it covers up the edges, I suppose, or the end points of all of those arrows. You can kind of see how that works. Once I have the S and the T in place, then I'm going to go ahead and put in the 3 middle letters, trying to keep them as evenly spaced as possible. This does spread the letters out a little bit more than they were on the card originally, and I'm totally okay with that. I think the spacing is actually really good on this page. Then there was also this portion here. I don't remember what this says, but it's like a little subtitle that went in the middle of the start and the here words. And what I decided to do was to actually use it as a tiny phrase type of sticker. So I trimmed down the edges. I'm going to add some adhesive and I'm going to stick it across the A in the word start. I think that actually looks really good. And then it gives me a use for that little piece as well, so I don't have to throw that one in the garbage. Okay, so now that we've got the title piece on the start side of my journaling, next I'm going to go through all of these little labels and pull out the numbers 1 through 16. And then I've got 17 through 31 plus 1 blank one that will go on the back side. They do have some of them have a little bit of adhesive on the backside because when I printed my journaling on these, I did it through my computer printer. So essentially, and I probably should have filmed part of this, but I didn't, but I'll try to explain it as best I can. I took one of the digital die cut labels and I added it into an 8.5 by 11 canvas. So it goes directly into the middle of the canvas. Then I printed that off onto some regular paper, just at the lowest quality because I don't need it to be fully saturated with color or anything like that. Once I had the piece printed, then I added a text box that allowed me to put in my journaling into the middle of the label, and then I deleted the original label off of the page. So all that my 8.5 by 11 page was left with were these 2 lines of text in the middle of the page. So then what I could do is I could take my actual label pieces, these pieces you see here, add some adhesive to the back of them and stick them directly on top of the printed label on my page. And then I can send that through the printer and it will add the 2 lines of text exactly where I needed them to go. And I could repeat that for all 32 of these. And that's what I'm talking about when I say that this is very tedious and you might want to just handwrite in them. But I like the look of the typed out text. So I chose to just go ahead and take my time and add the text onto each of these 32 labels. Once I have the labels selected, I did my best to evenly space them on the page here. They're still not quite evenly spaced, but I'm going to fix that as I am adhering them down. I use my T-ruler there just to help me place them into the middle of the page and try to keep them as straight as possible. And then once I have the bottom one and the top one done, then the rest of them I'm adding on there just by hand. I'm not using my T-ruler for the rest of them. I just use my eye to try to keep them as in line as possible. Okay, so now you can see that I did the exact same treatment to the back side of this page. So the here title page, I fussy cut out the word here. I added that to the title piece, and then I did the same thing with adding the other 16 labels in a line as close to the middle as possible down the page. With those two pieces done, I can now create this interactive part. So what I'm doing is I'm taking score tape and I'm adding it to the two inside flaps. So it kind of naturally folds up. And then once I have the adhesive on there, I'm taking off the backing for one half and sticking down my journaling onto the inside portion. Then I'm going to add adhesive to the back of the journaling page, and I already have adhesive added to the back of the hinge piece as well. I can remove the backing for this, and then I'm going to stick the second half of my journaling back to back with the first half, which you'll see here in just a second. So this is going to create the journaling piece that will move back and forth across my 12 by 12 layout. I'm keeping this as close to perfect as possible so that I don't get any overhang or anything like that. And then now that I've got the journaling piece done, I'm going to remove the inside or the part of the inside adhesive from the flap as well. And then I added the photo face down on top of my journaling, and I'm pulling down the flap there on top of it, if that makes sense. That's going to help so that it creates this itty bitty piece of spine so that when you fold the page over, it doesn't buckle the picture underneath. Then I can add adhesive to the back of the photo part. So just the photo part, and that I'm going to stick down on yet another piece of 12 by 12 white cardstock. So you'll see that right here. We're going to press that all down, and now I have this flap that moves. So the only thing I have left to do is add the second half of my photos to the opposite side. So I'm adding my adhesive to the back side, and then I'm actually going to push the photo just slightly underneath the page here. So you'll see that I'll try to line it up on the edge, but it would go over the middle. And then if I put it in the middle, then it slightly overlaps the outer right-hand edge. So I like better that it overhangs the outside edge because I can just trim that off and nobody will be any the wiser. So you can kind of see how it's overhanging. I'm just going to grab my trimmer here, and we're going to take off that extra piece at the edge. And then this is essentially done. So the only other thing I need to do is I need to add a tab that kind of identifies the fact that the journaling piece moves. So this is going to stick out slightly from the 12 by 12. It's going to be totally fine. The 12 by 12 will still fit inside of my 12 by 12 album since they are quite a bit longer than just the 12 by 12, or wider. Wider, I think is what it would technically be. Anyway, so I'm going to take the tiny phrase stickers, find a couple that make sense, put them down on the white piece that goes inside of this Avery tab, and then we can stick the tab down into the middle of this journaling page, and that creates an element that makes it easier, number one, to flip it, but also helps to identify that there is something that you can, in fact, flip there. Then I need to create a piece to allow me to put this inside of my 12 by 12 album, but outside of the page protector, because obviously a flip is not going to work inside of a plastic page protector. So we're going to add the date stamp. I debated for a hot second here whether to date stamp this from like January 1st, 2021 to December 31st, 2021. And that still is something I might go back and redo. But ultimately, I stamped this with the date that I put this layout together. So yeah, I do feel like I need to go back and add the 2021 dates so that we can understand, or when I look back at this in years to come, I will know that these stories were from 2021. I think that now that I'm thinking about this, I actually really need to go do that, because it won't make sense. If somebody looks at this, they'll be like, was this all from February? So it won't make sense. Okay, so to create the edge piece here, I have a pack of transparencies. They are just plain transparencies. They are not able to be printed on. They're just plastic. And I trimmed down a piece of it. So it's 12 inches tall. I trimmed it to about 1.5 inches wide. I lined it up on another one that I had in my stash that was already done, another one of these kind of interactive 12 by 12 pages, in order to help me know exactly where I needed to put the holes and exactly where I needed to put my page so that it fits into this album and sits in the right place compared to all the other pages. If I didn't have that though, I would have just grabbed out one of my page protectors and used that instead. So done the same thing, clipped it onto the page protector, lined that up in order for me to mark where the holes needed to be, and then also where I needed to stick down the page to so that it would be even with the rest of the layouts in my album. I'm grabbing my power punch in order to punch the holes into the plastic so it can go inside of the album. And then I believe that's where I call this done. I do have a little extra adhesive on the back to stick down. And then, yeah, friends, that is it.
All right, friends, that finishes up my layout for today. This one turned out perfectly. I am so happy with how this all looks, and just so happy with this part, this interactive part. I think that is so fun for this layout. So I did go ahead and add on one of those plastic transparency or acetate pieces, which I cut down. I get these in 12 by 12 sheets, and I'll make sure I link the product that I use for this one. I believe I get it off of, it might be off of Amazon, or it might have been off of scrapbook.com, but they come in 12 by 12 sheets, and I just cut them down to about 1.5 inches in width and then line that up. Typically I use a page protector to help me line it up, but I actually had one in my stash already that I just used the backside to help me determine where to put it. And then eventually another interactive type of 12 by 12 layout will live on the back side of this one. So this whole thing will be outside of the page protector. Okay, so let's go ahead and quickly go through the journaling. We have 32 highlights from 2021. So I have Isabella, or I said celebrating Isabella's 6th birthday with a visit to the zoo and a delicious nothing bundt cake dessert. The presidential election finally coming to a close as Joe Biden was sworn into office. After months of having to stay home, returning to the Detroit Zoo as a family and making it a goal to come monthly. Going with Haley and Mom to shop for a wedding dress and seeing Haley find the one. Nickel Creek coming back together for a 20th year anniversary and attending their live stream performances. Receiving the COVID-19 vaccines and feeling like we could live with less fear and more normalcy. Izzy beginning to blossom in her artistic expression and finding more and more joy in being creative. Erin learned how to make a from-scratch homemade pizza, dough, sauce, and toppings. So delicious. I had the opportunity to teach in the 2021 One Little Word classroom. It was such an honor to be part of it. The first time we got to spend a day with Erin's family, the kids were so excited. This moment was precious. I took the kids to Crust randomly, and we came back and had a tea party together. We had so much fun. After deciding we would like a home with more room to live in, we put our house on the market in May 2021. On a rainy day, Erin and I took the kids to the local ice cream shop, Scoop, to give them a special treat. My book club was finally able to meet in person after a 1.5 years of being virtual. This was so special. In June, I went on the annual Wine Max trip with my mom, and Haley bought all the wine. Brandon and Ariel got married this summer on Mackinac Island. It was a mini vacation for Erin and I. So that's 1 through 16. Then we celebrated the 4th of July with the Prues and Alex, Caitlin, May. We loved going downtown Fenton. It had almost been 2 years since any of us had gotten a haircut. We finally did it and we all felt fabulous. We got to travel to North Carolina to visit Danielle and RJ. We met baby Sylvia. She is too precious. On one occasion of visiting with Haley, we took the kids to Potter Park Zoo. It was such a nice time. May turned 1 this year, and we got to witness her first taste of sweet desserts. She definitely loved her cake. We always enjoy going on our annual family trip to Saugatuck, Michigan. The weather and time with family were great. Isabella started public school for the first time this fall. Izzy is going into first grade in Fenton schools. We moved into our new house at the start of September, and we're so happy to be done with the buying and selling. Yeah. Jonah turned 3, and we celebrated with the Shaws and Grants. Phil made Jonah a bluey cake to celebrate. I enjoyed a weekend in Traverse City with the girls for a bachelorette party weekend celebrating Haley. Our family went with the Vandermeulens to the Detroit Zoo Boo for the first time this year. Jonah met Blippi on Halloween outside our house, and his whole entire life was made. We traveled to Mexico for Haley and Axel's wedding. It was my first time to Mexico, and it was so nice to be there. Haley and Axel are officially married. They had the most gorgeous wedding filled with so much love. We went to a Lions game with my mom and dad, and they won. We had so much fun hanging out with my parents there. We had family photos taken professionally for the very first time, and I absolutely love how they turned out. So there we go. There are 32 highlights from 2021. All right, friends, I hope this inspires you. I hope that maybe you will try something interactive on a 12 by 12 page, since you now have some ideas for how to put this into your album, how to keep it in there and still make it functional. Also, maybe this is a really good reminder or opportunity for going back and reflecting over a period of time and thinking about highlights from that period of time. Maybe that's, last year, the 2020 annual year. Maybe it's even before that. Maybe it's throughout the whole pandemic that as we've been living through the pandemic, maybe going back and thinking about what are some highlights from this time and taking a different perspective, a different viewpoint or lens on this time in our lives. Maybe it's looking at last month and what were some highlights from last month and how can you document those in your memory keeping projects. Okay, friends, well, that is going to be it for me for today. So this one and Monday's layouts are the 2 that you will see process videos for. I have another 7 layouts that I'm going to be putting together. And you, along with everyone else, everyone will see those layouts in a wrap-up video that will come out the second Friday of the month. So keep an eye out for that so you can see all 7 of them come together. If you have any questions, please let me know in the comments, and I will see you guys back here on Friday for Fridays with Friends and next week for some more process videos. Until then, have a great rest of your day, and I'll catch you in the next video. Bye, friends.